Okay, thank you, Charlie Joe. I don't know. Okay, are you guys talking and I'm not hearing you? So far, I've not heard anybody. Thank you, Brian. Okay.
Colleen, can you hear me?
Charlie Joe, I'm not hearing you. I can see you're unmuted, but I'm not hearing you. So. As long as you can hear us, that's probably okay. We may just have to use the chat function tonight. I'm not sure why I'm not hearing you guys. Everything looks like it's set up correctly. Oh wait, the speaker's not on. Okay, I've got it turned on now. So Charlie Joe, if you can try to. Now it's working. Sorry, it was muted on the computer. Perfect. Okay, guys, we're gonna get started. Sorry, we're just a little bit messing with some tech to get the other few people on virtually. So if you guys want to sit, have a seat, who's gonna be here in about half an hour? I'll send around. Everybody needs a little bit of time to talk. So when you guys, anybody come from the street, so like, comes in that direction or not? Is that, are you supposed to take the first exit? Is that the fastest way to get to high school, or is it taking the first exit? That's what I thought too. That's like, as soon as I went past, I was like, I think that was not. Go there. Yeah, it's like something you turn right. Yeah. Right before you get to the baseball tournament. But my phone was telling me to go through town, and I was like, I don't think that's right. As I'm going around. Compared to like the grandness of this, I think middle school kids like feel bad about themselves. They don't know any better. They don't. They are like they really don't. Now, are they at the intermediate school and then they go into town or not? Or what is the intermediate school? Yeah, so I just think after fifth grade you'd be like, dude, this is like. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for being here tonight and for taking your time. I know it's been a busy season. It's you've still got fall speeches and lots of things happening at school and who all went to national convention this year? Okay, there are lots of people. Okay, or other trips. A lot of people down here sound like went to some other places too. And I know that's where some people are tonight. And then others had just some other things that came up. So we put some on Zoom. So we're just going to kind of go through. Everybody get anybody that wanted it an agenda. More back here somewhere. Perfect. So tonight is really just a goal to try to make sure we're all on track with the Protégé program, check in on some brainstorming, some ideas, things that we might need help with. I am recording this session, but we're going to pause it on some things that are not relevant to, or not anything we're going to broadcast, just to have for a few people who couldn't get on last night for whatever reason. So we have one there that we can share if we need to, but we won't record anything that is confidential or maybe about your school or anything like that. So we will pause it for some of those things. And some of that's going to be just like small group discussion as well. And so we may want to move here a bit to be like with mentors and protégés that we can start out with. It's not really all that important. So the first things that I have on there are just to check to make sure that everybody's getting email, which I know sounds silly, but there's times when people will like tell me at state convention that they've not received an email from me all year long and things like that, that like just one letter's off or something, but there is someone at your school that's getting that email. So just some of the things that we just need to kind of look at and make sure we've got rolling. So that's just going to kind of be where we start tonight. This might not work. That's okay. So first to start out with, like, just talk to somebody close to you in a group of 2 or 3, like, what would you say have been your successes for the year? We wanted to start off on that positive. Sometimes it's really easy to think about all the negative things and not necessarily focus on the positive. So talk to somebody, a couple of people close to you. What have been some successes that you've had so far this year? Okay, so let's start with that. People on Zoom, feel free to offer that up in the chat as well. You can also put in things that that have been a success for you so far this year. What would you say has been a success? That's very important, Laura. Good to know. So what do you guys think? What all did you have on, what would you say on there for successes that you've had so far this year? Laura Motley shared that she had Motley Minute. Is that her name? Monket. Okay. Should have asked. She said she successfully drove a bus full of kids all over to National Convention and back and did not hit anything. So that is a definite success, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? And this is not a one-upper. You're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she drove a bus. That's not anything. That's not the point of the game. But what would you guys say? What's been some successes?
Caitlin will brag on herself, but she had a record-breaking month sale this year.
Rock on. That is awesome. Thank you for bragging on her. Sometimes we need help with that. That is a huge success. And you're still alive to tell about it, right?
Yeah.
Good. That is awesome. That's awesome. Anybody else? This is not the difficult part. Jim, do you have anything?
Oh, no, I mean, I was talking about how I took the kids down to the Blue Hill to shoot some rice farming videos for that scholarship contest. So that was a lot of fun. One of the farmers let the kids try to combine, all that sort of thing. So it was really practical experience.
Yeah, is that an experience they would get at home or not? I mean, like
No.
rice or combines? Yeah, that's really
They
cool.
learned a lot. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you bought them the new FFA rice socks, right, to celebrate that? Rice, baby. They all need those in the video. Just kidding. Well, that's awesome. Don't say like, oh, well, no, that wasn't a success, because that's really a cool thing. So, okay, anybody else want to share something there?
We got kicked out of UNC Field Day because of, the wait list. And so we threw together an agribusiness tour of basically our hometown area in like 24 hours. And I think our kids are still talking about all the places that we went. So it was really fun. Just things that farmers are doing and even businesses are doing that the kids don't realize. And so sometimes you should just tour your own little area.
Yeah.
To convention.
Somewhere else. Yeah. Well, that's pretty amazing though, that like that fast turnaround. Sometimes when we have to be the like on the spot ingenuity or whatever, sometimes that is like the best thing ever for us when we realize some things that we didn't know were there. Well, I just wanted to include this because so much of the time, and just the running, and the parent teacher conferences, or all the things you think about that you guys have done in the last quarter and a half now almost, or whatever kind of units of measure you're on for time since school started. So much of the time, the things that stick out to us are the things that don't go well. That one teacher that said something else about your teaching style, or that one parent that was not so happy about their student, or that one class or that one student that's just made really driving you crazy and you forget about all the things that are positive. And so much of the time it does, we do need to take time to reflect and really think about what are those successes, where are we at right now? What do we want to see, you know, as we move into the next semester? And it's good to do that. I think on a quarterly basis, just looking at your goals and looking at what do you feel like you've been successful with. Okay. So just the next part, then we're just going to kind of check in and update. And so earlier this week, I sent you guys a survey. I think I discussed this, but I couldn't find where I actually got it out to you guys, which I apologize, because typically I send that right after July. So the teacher survey is an award for your high school ag teacher, for first year teachers. So I need you to go on the link that was on that email, and I'll be sending this like every week and checking in again with you in January until we get it. So if you did not go to an ag program in high school, I just need you to put, I wasn't in an ag program. If you went to school out of state, just put, I went to school out of state. But even if your ag teacher is retired, go ahead and put it on there, because a lot of the time we still, those people sometimes come back and teach. And a lot of them, we still keep track of how many they have, because it's pretty amazing, the number of, so your high school students who then became ag teachers. So we're gonna ask you guys to put your high school ag teachers in there. And it's one of those things that if you had 4 different ag teachers throughout the course of your high school career, go ahead and put all 4 of those ag teachers. If it's 1 a year, or if you have 4 in your school. I get yelled at. Know those people, I don't know who they are, and they're like, I was so-and-so's ag teacher. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, they didn't report that. So I try to make sure that we get all those things correct. Just want to make sure nobody's kicked out. Okay. So that's the first to do. If you can get that finished up by January, I think I sent that on Monday. It was a part of like a to-do list for proteges. There's 3 things to do in that. The second one is actually a little more urgent, and I'll probably bother you about this one a little bit more because I've got to get people lined up. So January the 15th is our final face-to-face meeting of the proteges. That is just a proteges meeting, but if mentors are willing to travel to Columbia, I'll pay for your mileage. You'll have a wonderful meal and get to impact young teachers or young professional teachers. So in January, we have that meeting. It's in Columbia at ASRC. It's an all-day meeting. But I need to know what you guys want to do. So first and second year teachers are going to fill that out. That's going to provide you with the opportunity to discuss what that morning is CDEs and LDEs, and you actually like walk through the activity. So 2 years ago when we had it, I had Jeff Forrest, for example, come down, because if you're going to teach kids dairy cattle, like you should probably know about how much bleach you should put in. And that's a kind of an important thing, right? You get a little more than you should, and your kids, kids are going to want to do dairy foods because they're all going to be ill because you semi-poisoned them. And so things like that, where you walk through the entire, the teacher was going to teach you how they teach their kids how to do the different skills within a CDE. And so we don't offer necessarily every single one, but if there are things that you want to see there, I'd like you to rank those so we can try to get most people's top 5 CDEs offered that day. There's probably also going to be, if you don't want to do a CDE or an LDE, then the other option will also be a proficiency award and chapter, star chapter award application process. I'm working on trying to get someone there to discuss that as well. So that's the morning. Then we eat lunch, and then in the afternoon, we'll have different sessions based on what it is that you guys need. So the second part of that survey is the STAR. So that's our state Teach Ag results survey. So every year, Pam Prophet-Rowland is our STAR director for the state, but a lot of what she does is information that I gather for her. And so that's going to ask you for your top 3 successes and your top 3 challenges. That doesn't go where it would say like Colleen Abbott has a problem with her administrator, that's not on there. But it is going to be, so we strip off the names and then that's sent. And all that is there is like, this is second year data and this is first year data. It's not coordinated with your name or anything like that, but that is just to help us to provide professional development on those things. So in the afternoon, if we have a lot of people who really don't know how to have a conversation with their administrators, we'll have some former ag teachers who are now administrators in the room to have those conversations with people about how do you talk about contracts, or how do you talk about FFA stipends? How do you talk about getting better facilities or better equipment? How do you talk to people about whatever it is? And so if that's something that you struggle with, but that challenge in there is administrators. If you're having issues with parents, then I'll ask some teachers who might have told stories in the past at different areas of seminars or these kind of meetings that I know that they're really good at talking to parents about what are techniques that you can do to have conversations with parents. Maybe you are really worried about your banquet plans and you don't really know, maybe you've never really had a banquet that went exactly the way it should go because of COVID or whatever it is. and you really would like to hear how different people do different banquets, that's something we can have, have people come in and talk about. So we have like 3 different sessions, and you choose what sessions you want to go to during that time. And then that's pretty much our day, but it's based on, so January is based on what y'all say in the survey. So I'd like for you to get that accomplished as soon as you can. So any questions about those top 2? Okay, the next one then is going to be the learning experiences and assignments. And so does everybody, I know we're going to do a little tutorial on shared drives. So stop sharing for a second. Minimize this. So when we go down here, you should have access to, like, this is your 2, and then there will be proteges.
Whatever connection that matters.
Oh, it won't cast. Let's see. Yes, it does. Thank you. This says available for specific video sites. So does it not go up there, like, to show them a shared folder? Will it not show, like, just your screen?
Yes, you have to share.
Can I not just change my display mode? Can I not just duplicate or extend this? It won't
If
let me
you-
do
No, you have to cast through your, like through the Chrome. So if you want to go back,
Mhm.
then you're through, go like you're gonna cast again.
this. Right.
And then at the bottom, do on sources at your desktop.
Okay.
And then it'll go between all your, and then now you have to go up to Shepherd 2.
Perfect. Thank
And then
you.
it'll show whatever tab that.
Okay,
you're in.
perfect. Okay, so when you go to, whenever, like, I sent all of you guys a share to your thing, or if you go into your Google Drive, and you go down to shared with me, right here, then you should, on yours, it will say Colleen Abbott. You can type in here Colleen Abbott, and then it will come up to this tab of the year 2 or year 1 learning experiences. And then there's going to be protege shared files. And then within this, you will find your name, and then that is what you, where you should upload. So if I'm gonna, who's in here? Lizette, where are you? Maybe that's the problem. You don't have a shared drive.
Bottom right, second.
Thank you. So then, Ben, if you come here, then you're gonna go over here to new, and you're gonna hit upload, and you will file upload or folder upload, and then all your stuff will be right there for me to see.
So just go to the new.
You go up to new, and then either file upload or folder upload, and then you'll click on, like, if I do this, it's gonna ask me where it's coming from. So I can go find it on my desktop, or if it's already a Google, no, okay, that's fine. And that's how you go to get that, okay?
Okay.
Have other people had issues with the shared drives or anything, or you got things rolling?
It'll move right to there.
It'll
You
move
can
right
see
to
it.
there, and then I'll see it. And if you send me one and say, hey, it's there, then you can do that. Now, the other thing is, though, is if you have been sharing those, like in email, then I will go back through and pull all of the email and put them in your share folder too. So it's not a big deal one way or the other. Okay.
Do you want the ones that us email to you? You want us to put it there anyway?
No, if you already emailed them, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. So any other questions on those, on that shared drive, everybody has access to that. If you've had any problems with it, how are we doing with if you haven't checked that yet, please do that. Okay, so that we know what we're doing with our learning experiences. So, so far you should have turned in your calendars and your behavior plan, depending on what year you are. But what I'll do is before that January meeting, I'll send you a checklist of, hey, these are all the things that I know that I have. Did you send something somewhere else? Because if you shared it, but it's not in a folder, I may not know where it's at. So let me get this. Gotta pay for dinner. Pause.
Yes, I did.
Perfect, okay. So do you have any questions about those learning experiences then? Everybody's rolling with them? And again, the reason why we do that is not to torture you or anything like that. It is that, based on what ag teachers have in place, this is what typically makes them more successful. Now, someone might, like Brian may say, I don't need learning, I don't need to do a teaching calendar. Well, he may have been doing his ag science too, and the same thing. He knows about November, he's gonna start in on whatever it is, you know. But if you are a new teacher, you don't necessarily know what the plan is. So those teaching calendars help you to know, what am I doing next? Am I on target? Am I gonna get through the material that I wanted to get through? It's at least a target of an idea of what it is that you want to do. And those change. They don't, I doubt for all 19 years or whatever, you do exactly the same thing. It's probably not gonna happen like exactly like that. Is that way too much better? Yeah. Sorry about that. So any questions on those? Very rolling. I did have, thank you. I did have some questions on the, what is the protege mentor activity? And that could be really anything that's going to help one or both of you. I think Ben shared his at summer conference where you guys inventory shop, right? Shop management plan and all those kind of things. And so it may be that your welders or your MIG welders are in terrible shape and you don't really know how to efficiently change the wire spools, or you don't know, you know, are all these things working right? Or there's a bunch of equipment here that I don't know about. If your mentor can help you with that, that would be a great plan. Okay, to go through maybe some of those things. A lot of people worked on like their greenhouse orders. So how do I make all these different hanging baskets that people are actually going to want to buy and that kind of thing? So they may have a lot of, you may put together a plan on how do you order plugs and that kind of thing. So there's lots of those, lots of different ideas that you can do there. Basically, you send me the idea, that's what's due to begin with. And then after you implement it, just kind of a, what did you do? What did you learn? How did it go kind of thing, okay? Different people across the state, there was somebody that replumbed their greenhouse together. I mean, there's some things that were like very beneficial projects and opportunities. So just making sure you just have an idea on that. Ideally for first year teachers, the mentors will go and visit them. If that's not going to be possible, can you Zoom and watch? Just the main point of that is to provide feedback on the actual instruction that's happening. So even if it is potentially zooming in on a class or two classes, if I were going to do it, I would want my mentor to see my worst class, just to say like, here's the behaviors that you're seeing. What is it? What would help me the most? Those kind of things. To me, that would be the most beneficial, not necessarily something that I've got 3 kids and it's pretty easy to do. You may not get as much feedback on something like that. But that could be a hard class because it may be really difficult to keep them engaged when there's really small, small students. So think about that and see if there's an opportunity in the next, usually that happens this time to Christmas or shortly after Christmas. Once we get past the January, it's really tough to find time to get out of your classroom and go visit that protege. So if that's possible, that was something that we'd really like to have happen with those first year teachers, for sure. Okay.
I mean, I got a question for the group.
Yeah.
Is anybody doing an in-school mentoring program too? In addition to this? Okay. Any second year teachers, do you know what's required? Is there a second year component for that? Well, let's run into the administrator that do all that left. And the new administrator said, what do I need to do for a second year mentoring program?
It'll be covered with what you're doing here, so you don't have to stress about it.
Okay.
It'll be covered. This program, yes, this program meets all the requirements of your certification. So some teachers send them to like RPDC, additional mentoring things where they go 3 or 4 different days. Some people love those, some people don't like them at all. So
it's a school district thing.
It's a school district thing.
It's not a DESE thing.
DESE requires a mentoring induction program. But that can be like literally paying a coach $500 more to tell you how to use the copy machine and this is how we pay for lunch. And that may be all you get from it. There's not like, it has to include these pieces.
Okay.
There's not really anything, no one's ever checks that on the level, so.
Okay. So long as it's this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So then the other piece down there is the final thing is registration for the protege program. So there's a link on judging card. You'll find that on the November 30th date. So a link for year 1 and a link for year 2. If you go in and register, that will create an invoice for you. If your school district doesn't want you to use judging cards, let me know. I can send you one directly from the zoo. And if it's going to be an issue for you to get that money paid, then just let me know and we can work something out on that. Okay. So there are other options, but I said judging cards is usually the easiest because they're already set up as a vendor, and it's creates an invoice and you turn it in. It's no big deal. If they have any questions about it, like a lot of times people do pay for it out of PD funds. That has happened before. And there's also the school gets reimbursed $200 when you complete the program. So that's just something else to make sure that they're aware of. Okay. So any questions on those things? So these 3 items, the teacher, the survey, and then that registration process, those should really be taken care of this month if at all possible. The registration will close on the 30th for judging card. I can go back in and add you to it. It's just not as clean. Okay. Sometimes it looks like I just created people to pay. So I don't necessarily like doing that. I always have an email from you in writing to make sure that's good. But any other questions on this? Good to go. Okay. I just always go through all those things because I was there. How about state reports? Do we have any questions on? So we've had 2, one state report that's due, which is which was our VA2 due September 20th. Did everybody get that completed and turned in? Yes, baby. If not, Jim probably has your name and you will become the dartboard here shortly. No, we just want to make sure we get those things accomplished. That was the one. That report is one that if you've not shared that with your guidance counselor, if you've not shared it with your administrator yet, those are good things to have a conversation about, because this is the time of the year that if you, as a program, if you're seeing things that this is the 2nd year in a row now, we've had this trend where there's been a lot of kids that are really involved, really engaged in animal sciences, and we only teach animal science one semester every other year. That may be something you want to look at in the future. So it may not be a conversation that changes your class schedule for next year, but you need to start those conversations. And if there does need to be a class change for next year, that does need to be happening now. You don't wait till March to try to get that fixed, because counselors will have already done all of those things. Okay. The one that's coming up then is going to be the VA3 that's due February 1st. Any mentor want to say, how do you take care of that one? How do you do that? Lovely, where we collect all the information on, it's a review of SAE projects and the amount of money students have made. So any good suggestions on how to collect that information?
Their assignment is to finish out the record book, sorry. And then as a part of that, depending on what year they are, they turn in Form 12s, 11 and 12. Turn in Form 11 and 12 for each year that they have to complete.
Okay.
That's how we do it.
That's the way to do it. Okay. That helps. So what it is like you go through and you're going to put in every kid who has ever cut a cord of firewood and they have it recorded in their record book. You're going to put down 15 cords of firewood. You're going to put down quarts of honey or chuckers or whatever else they have, crazy things, head of cattle, all those kind of things. And then you put in hours that they worked and money that they have. And in the end, it makes a report that is nice for you to share with your advisory council, which we'll talk about later on tonight, with your school board, to make sure, and with your students, to make sure that they know that, that the Purdy chapter has raised this much money, and Purdy's not a huge town, right? So, but if you show that how this was $150,000 or something like that. I mean, idea what your goal was last year? Yeah. No, you're like your total on your SAEs, how much money you raised. I mean, that's just a number that we always talk about, because it was something that, even though we're a little big town, we've only got 55 kids, like those kids were making some money working those turkey barns and different things that they were doing. So that's a number that you share. This is also things that you're putting into the economy. And so we just want to make sure that you have a plan for that. Don't wait until January 31st to try to get it done, because you will not. So you need to have a plan for, am I closing out record books the beginning of the end of the semester, or right when we come back? Because as soon as we come back, you're right into the season for state degrees and proficiency awards. So you want to just kind of have a plan of how do I get that information put in. But it's a very large spreadsheet. But that information then goes to the State Department, which then that's how they create what does the whole state have? Those are numbers that we share with legislators. Those are numbers that we share with sponsors, with people who are partners with us. And a lot of times that's what keeps that data is what helps us keep the support for ag education. So it's critical that we have that. Those numbers are based on your 2021, like your 21 year, not your 21-22 school year. So seniors that you had in the classes last spring, if you have data from them, put that in there. If you don't have data from them, you don't have anything to put in. But your seniors this year, you want to make sure that you have them close out their books in May so that you'll have that next year. So it's whoever was in your classes doing records in the 21 years, what you're collecting there. Okay? So then how did you do that last year?
Well, I would have halfway through, it was about 33 or 40.
Yeah.
Because I just, set that, I think Kathy or Valerie was still there at the
Yeah.
time. I said, because I didn't have any data from the previous year.
Yeah, and so it's, yeah, if you don't have it, you don't have it. So you want to give the most accurate, complete data that you can, but if you don't have it, you don't have it. So it's not something like worry about, but it is something to try to do your best at. And if you have more than one teacher, you need to figure out who's collecting, data from what students, so you're not overdoing doing the work or any of those kind of things. Okay. And then the final report that we do is the VA5 in the summertime. That's going to also include your SAE visit. So we're going to talk a little bit about SAE visits later on this evening, and just making sure that we're doing those things that we need to be doing to make sure that we're where we need to be to get all those things completed. So if you don't turn in state reports, there are some repercussions as far as funding. You're not eligible for FP4 money. You're not eligible for enhancement grant money. So you want to just make sure that you get those done in a timely fashion as you can. If it's due February 1st and you turn it on the 2nd, that's not a huge deal. But if you don't turn it in ever, then that becomes a deal, because and some of you may have inherited those forms that had not happened from your previous people, but hopefully you can get all those things finished up. Okay. So any other thoughts on that? Other questions?
While we're on that subject of that before, I'll just plug it now.
Perfect.
Key one is to say something that, those of you that have had before this year, if you're not gonna spend it all, please try to go ahead and get through whatever you're gonna use and get your, what is it, FP2 submitted, so that he can find out if you guys have a waiting list, people that would like some additional funds, or any at all that maybe didn't have their form in, or there was a mess up or something like that. So if you're not gonna spend it and you know that now, then we can go ahead and take care of that now and try to help out some other schools.
Perfect. Okay. All right, we're gonna move on then.
And I do have a list on the way to somebody will get that.
Okay. Anybody who's worried they're on that list, they don't know if they turn it or not.
25 schools.
Perfect. So we've got a couple of your two proteges. Are you guys ready to do novel teaching ideas, or no? Are they good or not good? We'll go ahead. Then we'll eat as soon as we get done with that, so. There you go. Okay, you can absolutely come on up here. And there are a few the other night, they're like, I totally missed that memo. And I'm like, that's okay, you can do it in January, and if they're not here, we'll do it at the January meeting.
Can I log into my drive?
Just go up and add your account on this right-hand side. Click on this
Oh.
picture and then click on an add,
This mouse is weird.
and then add down. Bottom.
This mouse is-
And then you try to remember your password that is usually on your computer.
Okay, so mine is a small project that I do with my Ag 1 students, and we do it with the FFA emblem. So after I've talked about the FFA emblem, all the parts of it, what they symbolize, how they represent the organization, then I have them create their own emblem. It's called the What is Your Emblem activity. So yeah, they understand that it represents the organization. There's the plow, there's the owl, there's the sun. But I always want to further that. So when I have them do their own, they have to pick their own 5 symbols that represent them. They create their own little emblem, and then they have to explain why they chose each of those different symbols. And then after that, I have them present it to the class. So it's a fairly simple activity, but I love it because it further connects the idea of symbolism that we talk about when we talk about the FFA emblem, and how they're also used to represent people, not just organizations. And then it also helps me pull in other content areas because symbolism is definitely used in English. I have a sister English teacher, so I hear about these things all the time. So I know she would be proud of me for pulling that in there, but also it gets them up in front of their class, and freshmen are terrified to do that anyways. And it's just a life skill that is important for them to have, so I make them do it anyways. But I'll pull up the actual project that I use. So I posted on Google Classroom. Just a short little, I make this big.
Scoot over just a little bit in between there.
Oh, right there?
Yeah.
Okay. So they'll each have their own, and then they put whatever pictures they want for their symbols. I tell you, it has to be school appropriate. You always got to throw it out there. But whatever they want to put that represents them, they just find pictures, paste them in there. I tell them to kind of put them together to look like an emblem. Usually they just throw them on it. But then onto the next slide, they actually have to explain them to me. I tell them to make it their own. You know, they don't have to do a paragraph for all of them, but just give me a good sentence. You can't just say because I like this, you know. But I also like it because I do this towards the beginning of the year, and it helps me get to know them better because they have weird little things they like that I would never would have thought they liked. And then I see them like, okay, I can see that now. But it's just really fun. It's really simple, but I always enjoy it. So that's that.
Perfect. Any questions for Steve?
Give her a big power clap.
Clap, one clap, ready, one, two.
How do I sign out of just mine?
You did too?
Yeah, no, I did.
Do you want to
You're good, you're good.
I emailed you that. Right up. I'll print them off anyway.
You don't have to do that. While you're doing that, Charlie Joe said we use AET and create a Google form to help collect the data from for students to complete. So some people doing it electronically, then you already have that from there. Thank you, Charlie Joe. Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, ready? Okay. All right. So in my upper division courses, I teach animal science, ag construction, and crop science course. I'm just a single teacher program, so I don't have a way to divide copiers. So I'm just trying to cover the basics of an ag ed program. So I'm trying to cover the plant science and cover the animal science side of it. In recently our crop science class, you know, we were talking about tillage methods, and we started branching into farm equipment, you know, basic identification of farm equipment. And we got into the planting part of it, you know, the grain drills and the planters. And students became pretty good at identifying the difference between a planter and a grain drill by visual, you know, appearance. You know, to see the individual row boxes, all toolbar, they learned to recognize that's a planter, especially the iconic John Deere one with the yellow boxes, or the solid box of the grain drill. But I knew right away they would just see that and think, well, the seed gets dumped into the hopper box. They have no way of knowing how the seed gets into the ground placed, you know, systematically like it should. So I took a corn meter off my corn planter, I brought it in, and I could show the kids actually how this works. You know, we could take the actual meter itself and take it apart. And the way to do it is actually bring it in with the planter box on it. and then you take it off the planter box, because they don't ever pay attention to anything below the planter box. They go to a farm show, all you see is the boxes, you don't see what's below, how it works. So then I would take it apart and disassemble it for all the students and show them how the can works, how the finger and the spring return works. And then I would reassemble it, put it back together. And then I keep a little seed corn. I've got some little seed corn that's left over from a couple of years ago. I keep it in, just a coffee can. And once this is all reassembled back together.
Why is it green?
Treated. Yeah, I've heard that too. It's insecticide and fungicide. Yes, they always ask, can we eat it? Yes, you can, but your stomach's gonna hurt if you do. They just ask questions that just beyond reason, but yeah, they also know if I can eat it. I got it today, by the way. Did I eat it? No, I would not. So, but we put it all back together and then put the cover back on it, and then you can dump some seed in it. And then once you dump the seed in, you can start rotating the driver, and you can watch the fingers will turn as it catches that can. It'll pick the seed up. And then it's better to take it apart after it's got the seed in it, and then they can watch the fingers are holding the seed in as it comes to the drop hole here, and drop the seed in there, and then the belt delivers it. So it's good hands-on. I've got enough meters, bring my classes. I can bring store meters in, and kids can do this and take them apart and rebuild them. It's also a good way to get your core meter rebuilt too, get it cleaned up, have class read good. But if you don't have a core planer, many ag teachers don't. These wear out really fast. These vacuum plates, after a couple hundred acres on these row units, these things wear out pretty fast. And a lot of farmers will haul them into dealers and have them rebuilt. And these just get chucked in a salvage pile. They're going to scrap yard. So a lot of times you can go to a dealer and they'll give you the meters. It's not a deal you have any expense. You can always use some grant money and buy some, but I wouldn't. Any dealer, I'm sure they'd have to give them to you. They're just going to take it off the donation anyway. So, but that's I thought it was a good combination of the crop science curriculum, and also has some hands on for the ag mechanics part of it too. So.
Good.
Questions? Did you guys have this on record? Yes.
Get over here.
Were you on Chrome? What were you on?
Yeah,
Okay.
you could just, there you go. Look up in it's like my picture up on the right hand side.
Oh,
gotcha.
That's a good. Ah! Okay,
Right there, and then add your account, yeah.
okay.
At the end of the night, I'll just sign out of all chats. They're all.
Ah, They want it, they can have it. First try. What? Oh, okay, that's why. Hold on. Always having technical difficulties.
Does it have your name? There you are. Click on
Oh,
your name.
oh.
Click on your name. You're okay. There you go.
Oh, hey, look, there I am.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that. There didn't open up a new tab.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Hopefully it's the last one I did. Okay. So the my novel teaching idea. So every spring when I'm doing animal science with my freshmen, we go over reproduction, and I always find it really fun to get grossed out. So what I do, I start out, I'll go advanced. First off, sorry for the rough. I'll have them take and draw out the reproductive tracts, okay? And then I'll call up, local packing company. Like, hey, what have you got in the way of repro tracts? They save me one, bring it in on a tablecloth, lay it all out there, say, go cut and label everything. So I've got pictures in there. It's a really fun way to get the kids dirty and their hands on stuff. The boys were all sitting in the back of the classroom last year, just like, but the girls were all over it. it was a mail refill system, if you can imagine that. So I've got some pictures of that up there. And they can get as creative as they want on their posters, as long as it, meets the criteria of looking like what it's supposed to look like.
I think you have to enter, I don't know.
Okay, so there's another picture of that. So I want them to do both, because you never know what the packing plan is gonna have. So then that explains what I just explained. Here's some pictures of my kids doing that, cutting on it. As you can see, the boys in the background, definitely not wanting anything to do with it. So they had an alternate assignment, the ones that didn't want to get in there and cut on it. So I had them just take Sharpies on a white plastic dollar tablecloth, and that's where they would label their stuff on what was what. So there they are dissecting a testicle in the your right hand picture, and then on the left hand picture I am dissecting that same testicle. They did not give us very sharp scalpels. And there is some more of them working on it. And so yeah, that's my idea.
Did you have anything that you found surprising or? that wasn't
It's a
normal?
lot harder to identify some of those things while they're laying there on the table versus in a
In
picture.
a picture, right?
Yeah, they're not color coded.
Right, right. It's still good work doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
All right, is there any second year on the call that are gonna present tonight?
I don't think so, but I'll just check real quick.
Is anybody on here going to present tonight? No, everybody on here is first year, right? Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay, we'll get the rest of those then the next time. All right, we are gonna break for dinner real quick. It'll be about a half an hour to 20 minutes, and we'll 20 minutes to half an hour. We'll see how long it takes to eat. And during that time, two things I want to ask you about, two things we're gonna look at. So one is, I'm gonna hand out these sheets. This is a after action review, just a way for you to think about how do you reflect upon things that happen. So we're gonna use National Convention. If you went on National Convention, if you didn't do National Convention this year, pick some activity that you've done so far this year to kind of think through and ask, what would I do differently? And so this is a way for you to work with your students, with other adults that help you at the activity to get like instant feedback on things that are happening. So during dinner time, kind of talk about that. We'll have a brief recap. And then the other thing that we're gonna do right after dinner is thinking about, what do you do to continue to grow on a regular basis? What are things that you do to work on your content knowledge, to work on teaching experience, to work on your personal self? What are some things that you do on a regular basis? And there could be lots of different things for that. Getting nice, maybe? Beating someone up? I don't know, whichever. So those are two things we're gonna work on while we're at dinner, okay? Sound good? Kelly, would you care to bless the thing for us? Still do that in this part of the world?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right, please back in. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for this opportunity to come together and support our first and second year teachers. Be with us as we finish our semester and finish strong, and as we move into our busy time after the first year. Thank you for this food, and bless the hands that have prepared it, and thank you for your son. And it's in his name we pray, amen.
All right, well, everybody hop in. We've got sweet tea, unsweet tea, lemonade, water.
Yeah. Except for I got the off back. That side of the long way up. No, basically from like. I haven't decided whether I'm doing all four right up here. I would have failed. Yeah, I haven't done that yet. I was about. And so, we get done. And I think that's it. We got done. And I didn't sure. I know, yeah. I said I'd like to take 15 for the summer. But, and then you start driving, we did my parking maneuver, I made the bus longer, and walked, and I'm not that happy. I didn't flip all the way back.
You have 6 on here?
One more.
That all done. I parked, passed them.
There you go, Nicole, Sarah, Laura.
I did.
Oh, Mary Ann went on
back
again.
in.
Oh, yeah, Cameron, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And then I did parallel parking on the driver's side.
That's what I was just doing too.
Gotcha.
Start driving.
Perfect.
About halfway.
And did you see Missy walked in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just sorry.
I was gonna say, I was like,
I mean, still.
yeah, typically. Yeah, I'll print, I'll actually pause it right now.
And then, driving back.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started then, back in. So let's just take a few minutes to kind of discuss, National Convention and any big takeaways that anybody had, anything that you'll do, that went really well that you'll do again, or something that you learned that you're gonna do differently because you wanna make sure that something doesn't happen again. Any thoughts on that? Didn't have one? No, anybody have one?
I think there's a very fine line of running the kids, all day so that you don't have to worry about them after room checks. And, okay, we ran them too long, we are getting up too early and we are dead ourselves. I think there's a just fine line on timing there.
Especially if you're driving a bus, right? So losing 4 hours of sleep in a week is you get to a cognitive ability of being drinking a 6-pack. So if you're coming home from Indianapolis and you lost sleep every single night from what your normal would be, normally go to bed at 9:30 or 10 o'clock. I don't know what you do, but if you do most of the time normal sleep cycle and you're way out of it, it can be dangerous, right? And so it's one of those things of just trying to figure out where does that sleep occur? Yeah, that's something you gotta figure out what is that balance. So you might change something there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
Keep them out late enough, keep them up early enough, they don't misbehave much. They'll back, go back, go to bed.
When they have a little bit of time to sometimes idle hands over the devil's workshop, right? That is something that can happen if you give them too much downtime. Anything else they learned? I know some people said they're gonna definitely make sure they do bag checks, because some people had different issues with things that were in their bags. And so sometimes you think, I've got the best kids. And I said, I do think one of the years that I did have the best kids along, and they just decided to take some pillows from the hotel. And I said, it's one of those things that is a teachable moment. But if I'd have found them beforehand, we'd have gone back to Mount Vernon and taken them back to, not right on. But it was one of those things that I said, it was just, said you just never know what kids are gonna do. Sometimes they get together and they just get stupid ideas. So you don't ever know. But overall, what did you guys think about convention? Like, back in person was a positive and
Much better than the last one.
yeah. Good. I heard a lot of people just like the way they broke up the sessions, having some awards and some things, so it wasn't just lots of different things, so.
I
Good
liked
activity.
that, but I didn't feel like the sessions as a whole were as expected.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
I mean, I think we can sprinkle in more talent or something. Because the talent is good. The talent was better than that concert we could just see. That was terrible.
who was that?
Brett Young, it was awful. I wouldn't pay for that yet.
Really? That's no good.
He wore sweatpants. Kellen was like, are those with ankles?
Anymore.
He had on joggers,
Yeah.
sweatpants and loafers.
Looks like
It was terrible.
That was the very first thing Steve pointed out too. Like, he was like a couple seats in front of me, and as soon as he walked out on stage, I got a text message, is he wearing short pants?
Capris are not cool, man.
I did really like the student successes. Because that last session is really, really good, but very few people stay for it. And And so now they kind of sprinkled that stuff throughout a lot of the sessions. So like the kids, it was motivating for the kids, but
But when they did the movie on that session, it actually got over a lot earlier than normal
1:30.
on Saturday.
Because they had a game the next day.
At
We had to be
1
out there.
I know, but whoever the powers that be, in my opinion, that worked so much better. And you get more people actually willing to participate. Example, we rolled into, I think Baldwin was, 10:30. And so
And you stayed for the final session.
as opposed to 12:30.
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of the difference.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and I thought it had more of a traditional feel.
Yeah, that's what I was like.
I'll just say it, they weren't shoving inclusivity and diversity down our throats every time we turned our back.
And also, they also said it wasn't
Yeah.
just focused on sponsors
Yes.
either, so,
Yeah.
which is good, because that may mean that people are
Well, they ran
just listening, hearing,
with that new screen, they ran across the street,
the whole time, yeah.
so you didn't have that.
You guys think the sponsors were down? Tyson's wasn't there at all. And then the career show was down. I mean, there wasn't.
Well,
I was just curious if anybody heard why.
some of those companies though aren't doing
I think
anything
it's more
because of
of a
COVID.
corporate thing.
Yeah.
not a-
The corporate won't let them travel, so.
There's still a lot of that. stuff,
Or some of them don't even exist.
Well, I'm sure, I remember Tyson's was a major sponsor and they didn't do anything.
That's like Tractor Supply was too.
There's,
Mhm.
I was curious.
So what, help? I've been there since, what, 16, 15. So Jennifer, when you say that about the sessions, I mean, what was in the sessions, and I'm not picking on you, but you made the reference. Because we talked about that as staff, about how they broke it up. But you thought there wasn't very much excitement, so what did they have? Didn't they just have more speakers,
Well,
if I remember right?
and they had some talent. with
Well,
their
besides
sessions.
the talent, but I was trying to think of what else
They used to have keynote speakers
for
on,
each session, right?
well, on Wednesday
No, they
and then
used to.
again on Friday morning and Friday night. Which the speakers, I think the national officers do almost as good of a job, if not better than some of the speakers they paid to come last year. But I think our kids, the only talent that they saw the whole convention, and we went to 4 sessions, was the concert, the talent review thing before the Friday night session. Kind of in the sessions that we went to, I don't know, we saw, but
Oh, they have at least 2 each one. I mean, that same gal sang the national anthem, I think it's 4 or 6 sessions or something.
For our students, they thought the national officers were much more sincere and real and not fake and fluffy and
yes,
That team,
totally appreciate that.
yes.
I
I'm glad
hate
to hear
that
that.
fluffy
That
stuff.
team was awesome.
And I thought they did the opening ceremony appropriately, not all that overemphasis on we're at that thing,
Yeah, but when she said that, what was it that she said there at the end, she said you were the right person for the job or something like that, to him, whenever after he is national president, he started, you may not heard that.
I didn't hear that.
Saturday, but I just thought that was a perfect comment to the end of the whole deal of what I've been hearing sentiment wise, is that team was
They were good.
just what we needed as an organization.
Yeah.
After what we lived through.
Well, really after the last 2 or 3
Well,
years,
true.
because the last few years of national officers have been super fluffy and super,
You could tell that the tone has been changed.
yeah.
And we appreciate
Good.
Okay, so the other thing, that we had, the next question is just, how do you continue to grow? Because if you're kind of you're almost to the mid-year of your school year, and there's a lot of running that takes place between now and then, but how do you continue to make sure that you are working on, developing yourself on daily practice? So, who has something that they share that they do on a daily basis that helps you be the best version of yourself, basically? What are things that you do to stay on track?
I was hoping to hear somebody answer that. I need that.
Let's start my day with coffee.
Start your day with coffee. That can be important, right?
Well, you gotta have fun every day.
Gotta have fun every day.
If you don't, it's terrible.
Okay. Sometimes you provide that laughter, right? You gotta find things to
Yeah, we do a lot of that.
do,
But
your life sucks, have a sense of humor. I saw that the other day on a thing.
But I mean, at the same time, we had a lot of fun, but there was a couple of times last week that my shop class started themselves and it looked as good as when I wasn't in there as when it was at the end. So that means that you get stuff done.
However, you should always supervise your students.
Yeah.
Always make sure.
But reality is,
The reality is,
when your
there's
boss shows
something-
up in the hallway, you just, you know.
Not a dig on you,
started
Trevor, I'm just
themselves,
saying.
so, you know what I mean?
I do. I do what you mean. Okay. Anybody read books? Anybody a book reader or not? Okay, or blog reader? Started reading books.
Make fun of me.
All right,
I think she finished.
that's great.
To actually.
Then I always have to ask my son, was it a chapter book or a picture book?
I
know what it's okay, but you have
Former
to ask a question.
student of mine who used to do public speaking in high school, and she graduated like 12 years ago, I think. She messaged me a couple months ago, and was like, hey, Missy, I wrote a book, I need you to read it, tell me if it's stupid or not. I'm like, well, honestly, I don't really read books, but I'll read your book. And so I read it, and I was like, this is really good. And she's since got a publisher, so,
Good for her, that's awesome.
yeah.
That would be a book to read.
I've read another book since then.
Good for
I'll
you.
make fun of you still,
It's
though.
all right, it's all good. Some people are readers, some people are not. It's sometimes it's one of those that I said, just thinking about, knowing like my day's gonna go better if I make sure I have coffee and like routinely making sure you have everything done. So if you're drinking coffee, what can you have accomplished the day before that's gonna start your morning off better, that's gonna start your day off better, that's gonna make everything run smoother. And so just thinking about some of those things and what are those practices. For some of us, it's prayer. For some of us, it's making sure that like between these two classes, you pray. For some of you, this is just my timer to make sure we don't spend too much time on any one thing. So if we have, between classes, you may need to I've got to get outside and walk. This is the only time I can get outside. I gotta get some exercise outside of this room because there's no window in here. And that's how, the room I work in Eldon is. I don't have a room. And then I said that my room at Mizzou is a sauna at the moment. And so it's one of those things that I have to get up and get out of that area for every hour or so. As you know, I work better if I do those things, right? And so thinking about what are those best practices for you. Some people, if you haven't experienced podcasts, and those can be like personal growth podcasts, or that can be like, crazy, who done it, who killed whoever, whatever. We heard a commercial for that the other day, and my youngest son is like, turn it over, Mom, it sounds really scary. And I'm like, dude, it's a commercial. I said, I'm not listening to anything. But I force them to listen to Dave Ramsey every once in a while, those kind of things. But just whatever it is that's gonna keep you motivated to continue to do things and make sure that you're plugging in on a regular basis with people and those kind of things as well. So just thinking about, if you're in a place right now that you just feel kind of stuck, what is it that you need to do? And then especially when we go into the summer, making sure that you're coming to MVATA to re-meet and connect with people, that you're doing summer institutes. If there's areas, especially content that you could get better at, you want to make sure that you're thinking about what are those ways, what are those things that I still can develop and get better at in different places. Sometimes that's going to a neighboring school and watching another teacher teach, that kind of thing. Okay. In the same way that we have daily practices like for ourselves, we also sometimes need to take a step back and look at our program as a whole. And we have a tool to help us do that. So the program planning handbook is, and quality indicators is referred to as the blue book back in the day, because at summer conference, you would get a book that was blue, that was the bound version of all of these different standards and quality indicators that we have now. And so I have a sample for those of you, for you guys. This is a learning experience for the second year proteges, but this is also something that as a part of what is expected for you to help make sure that you are you're doing the things that will make a quality program. We strive to fill this out every third year. And so a lot of times people will take apart pieces and not do all 13 standards all in one setting. That's like torturous. So if you have a horrible advisory committee and you really want to get rid of all of them, then have them sit down in a meeting that lasts 6 hours and go through all 13 quality indicators, because they will probably not come back. But most of the time you want to have a positive advisory council. And so a lot of times what we're going to ask you to do is to pick 1 or 2 of these that you feel like you're pretty strong in, and you'll fill that out. And then maybe 1 or 2 that maybe you could your weekend, or you need some input from them because you need some community involvement back with them. So what we're gonna do for like about 10 minutes, and I'm gonna need some of the mentors to come up here or proteges to go back there, just so we have a good mix of people within groups, so we have some mentors and some proteges. If you guys wanna come up and like just turn tables around, but you can work on these in groups, or you can work on them just like mentor protege or a couple people together. But what I want you to do is like, one of you choose your chapter, and then I want you to work down through that and like, how would you answer those questions? Okay, and why would you say like, what is your evidence or what is it that you're giving? I have to check, just like Jim is going back through the CDE handbook, we realized all these links are broken. Last night, after I'd already printed all these, it has VEDs on there, which is what we just call course competencies, like it would be our major master standards, basically. But it still says VEDS on there, which is, what does VEDS stand for? Do you know, Jim? Because nobody last night could tell me exactly. It's vocational, educational directives, it's something like that. They were the yellow, they're yellow sheets. That was a VIM. I don't know them. These are VEDS. I don't know what a VED is. And nobody last night knew. And I last updated this, so I don't think DESE has the most common one, but it's still, most everything else is relevant on there, okay? So I want you to get into groups of 3, 4, 5, and kind of work through at least the first one of these together, so we can kind of have a conversation about where would you be, okay? I know what we're doing. We do need to mix up a little bit, because we're pretty heavy on proteges in the front, imagine that. Okay, so I'm just gonna set a timer in for us for about 10 minutes, and then we'll go from there. Okay, for my people online, what we're doing right now is we are working on these program management. So if you want to, on your computer, you can go to the DESE website, go to agriculture education, and then if you scroll about 3/4 of the way down, you're going to find this program management, and we're clicking on this standards and quality indicators. We are actually working on, right now, we're looking at the, let me stop sharing for a moment. We are actually looking at the, at number 1, that's about instruction and curriculum. So I'm going to bring that up real quick here. If you guys want to look at that, and then I just want you to read through that so you can kind of have an idea about what are those standards, what are those quality indicators, and they're going to just kind of work through those. But you can kind of look and see, you know, where would you be at if you're looking at your program. Well, we'll try the other one.
There are. We first got the nobody. We just created
So right now they're working through this standard one. Let me go ahead and share my screen again.
But I mean.
So we've got these quality indicators. So we would go through and look at them and say, you know, where were we at with these different pieces? Program philosophy, you know, do you have this evidence to share that your instruction is directed toward appropriate, clearly formulated objectives with input from the community, industry, and local administration? Well, if you're using the, you know, DESE curriculum, most of the curriculum that we have out there, that's going to definitely be true. And so if you have evidence over here, those things, you're going to put, you know, met in that box. And then as you go down through, you can look at these different things, and some of the time it is good to get input. So for example, does your ag program function with a proper balance between classroom, lab instruction, those kinds of things? And maybe they do, maybe they don't. So sometimes that's a good, if you're really heavy in one of those areas, then maybe it's good to hear that from your community, and kind of talk through those things. And so then, and you'll see on here, a lot of these different areas, there are lots of different places where we have different information. So for example, a lot of these are things like course descriptions. lesson objectives. You know, the different things that we have on here are things that you guys do for your learning experiences, because again, that's part of what is quality indicators. And so, so you can go through and look at and sample this and see where you're at, you know. But again, if you don't have a dual credit or articulation agreement and you have none, you have a 0, like that's not a huge, don't feel bad about those things. It's not like these are all things you're supposed to have right now today. These are things that you may have that you can, you know, that you may, it may take some time. And so there's things that you absolutely want to do, but then there's also times where, hey, this may wait. And so if we look down through here, I'll give you a list of the standards here. So we look at them like curriculum planning, organization, content. You're not going to make it very long if your top 2 standards here, you know, are not very strong. And so you've got to make sure that you're working on those things being really as a key. But there may be other things like adult ed or ag literacy, or maybe safety education and practices, instructional facilities. You know, maybe you have a brand new facility. So yeah, you're going to knock that out of the park. If you don't have a very great facility, then this may be an area you want your advisory team to look at. It says nothing about you as a teacher. It's really about the full program, and really also helping them to think about how the program's not a single person. It's not even just the teacher and the kids. It's, you know, there should be community buy-in. There should be partnership within community people. There should be definite support from the parents, you know, and then also school administration, school board, that kind of thing. And so this kind of helps us look at how all of those things are done. I'm going to share in just a minute when we come back here. When we come back down here, I'll kind of lay out for you all the second year people what it is. So if you guys want to take, you can get on that yourselves and kind of take a look at what all is on there with those 13 standards, but that's kind of what they're talking through for the next few minutes here. If anybody has a question, go ahead and put that in the chat box and we can talk about it. I kind of hope to, or if you guys want to unmute here and talk to one another, that's absolutely perfectly fine as well. If anybody has any of the mentors that have done this in the past, if you want to chime in with any information or ways that you use this, you know, that's something else that we're going to be doing. So feel free to use the chat box here in a minute to kind of share those things as well. Okay.
No, but you can pull people from there, so we're all sitting. If they start seeing on the, or whatever.
Yeah, if I didn't have, before we get to that, I think
I said, this has got to be a full copy because the Excel file is correct. It has competency management system or something like that is what it's called now. So this was a mess when I got it correct. Copy all of this.
where you go.
They have to do that. Interest survey. Well, it says here. So I guess if you want to go down, you know, that could be met by a lot of ways. Could be, you could also, something else. You inherit first. I had been told when I came on.
Information
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they were
It's
strong.
like a SIS.
Three now.
Oh, like Howard
This one's not great. The Excel version is right. So you whenever you put this back up.
Something we always did on.
Which I can. Yeah. Sounds right.
Then I can use that if I want to do.
This is
or something.
Yeah.
And then.
The legacy stuff is great. CCQI trades on our system.
Yeah, I don't know.
Full comprehensive.
So you.
It's not replacing it with something else.
But you're right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't. Specific enough. My opinion. And again. Are you online? So that would replace.
Yes.
I went to nine.
And he said they're. Going through like my personal. There's a part that you clear. Like we.
And that's the other thing about
Well, neither one of us went.
Okay, guys, let's go ahead and kind of discuss that a little bit. We probably didn't make it through everything. But these are just kind of two samples because, a lot of the time you have, conversations about what is, what are you teaching what you're supposed to be teaching? I don't think you're teaching what the teacher last year taught, or, some of that kind of stuff some of the time. And sometimes those questions like just get under your skin, or they make you question, maybe I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. This is not a grade card for you. This is not something like, the program is about not just you as a teacher, but the students, the parents, the community, the business partners that are in that community, like all of those things working together to make an ag ed program. A really truly successful quality ag ed program will live past any one person moving in or moving out of that program. And so those are things that you have to also keep in mind. This is not a way for you to look at it and you go like, man, I really suck, I'm not doing anything. Because some of the things have nothing to do with you necessarily, right? You don't control what your equipment or facility looks like when you arrive. But those are ways to have conversations sometimes about that when we look at some of those other standards. And so there's, like I said, there's 13 standards. I picked out a couple because this is one that just like, sometimes students will, sometimes proteges will ask, or people will say things, or mentors will be like, I don't know why I had to do all this crap, talking about the learning experiences. Like, I didn't have to do this, or I don't do this, or whatever it is. If you notice, a lot of that first standard are things we're asking you to do, course objectives and giving us objectives for the program, those kind of things. What's your philosophy? Those are all part of what makes up a quality, making up a program quality. So those are reasons why we want you to make sure you have those things in place. The second standard that I put on there is actually standard 8 on SAE visits, because that's been a conversation we've been having as a bigger ag ed community about what does that look like, and the number of on-site, going to the student's home, going to the student's place of work, seeing a student exhibit livestock, whatever it may be, that's an on-site thing compared to in-class visits, and how those are kind of skewed. And so looking at what is, like, how many visits am I supposed to do? And so that standard sets some things that are there. And again, it's not to make you feel bad about not getting to that necessarily point, but it is there has to be a standard for things. Whenever I said my shop at Tuscumbia, when we started the program, well, it's still today, but it's probably about, not quite as big as this, not as wide as this room, but about this big, and just had like one single little garage door, and this half was probably full of welding booths. So not a huge thing, where kids were used to going to Eldon, where they were like a factory making machine, right? Like, I did not even have a winch to do a lot of the things that we would do. So they're like, well, I can't, now we got a female, we can't build any trailers. I'm like, you were never building trailers here the last 12 years with the men, like, that's not a thing, right? But it was also something we had to talk about because they had tons of stuff crammed in there. It had become the storage for whatever. And so finally, I had to bring an advisory group down and say, okay, what does it say? And like, it had, I think it's standard 9, it talks about safe facilities. And it said, like, what is the standard for the space around the table saw? Okay, and then I said, what is we don't even have any markings on the floor for this table saw. And so then, there was like, oh yeah, and they're like, oh yeah, that planer, it's not even hardly long enough to have enough space for that planer to be safe, And so when we were looking at that and we were remarking that floor and everything, it was just a visual way for us to have a standard. It's not Colleen's opinion of how much space should be around a table saw. It's a standard of safety, for a quality program. The same thing can be true for the number of students per instructor. So if you're getting to that limit where you're like, man, I have a lot of students and maybe it's time, are we ready to hire on a second teacher? Or are we not ready? Some of the time you look at those different things, and there's some standards in there. So again, it's not just you wanting less of a load, which is sometimes how it's perceived. It's really saying, no, in order for us to have a quality program, we should really be at a 2-teacher program. And so those are conversations you may not be having in year 1 and 2, but you need to be aware of this tool that is there to help you kind of talk through those things. So, do you want to say something else?
Well, and right now you're looking at it as a measurement tool for yourself and your program. But as she stated, some of these things that you're not concerned about per se of adding, but whenever they know, when you're ready to, I don't know what year that would be, but if there's things of new equipment, if your advisory committee tells you, yes, we want you to get this equipment or that equipment or whatever, then you have a leg to stand on because those standards are in there. And I can tell you from my personal experience from getting to move into a new building during my career is that's how we got the space that we got, was because the kids we had and the old space that we had was not anywhere close to being safe to have 25 kids out there or whatever. So by having those measurements, that saved my bacon several times with the design and all that, because we had the tools we already had, plus what they were agreeing to let us get. Then you map those suckers out, so it helps with your square footage type thing. But so you look at it as a tool. I mean, it was really designed to help us, not to make you feel guilty, like you said. When it came out initially, I always said if I'd had that when I first started, I felt like I would have been further along because it kind of had everything in one spot. It's what we all been taught in bits and pieces type deal. And I mean, we've talked about this 3 years in a row now, right? As this quality standards, and it's going to come back full force next year probably from what we're talking about in this environment of the proteges. Because I was shocked the first 2 years in the fact that it's almost like, and this is not offensive to you guys, do not take offense to this, that some of you didn't know what the heck we're talking about. And so I went back to joint staff, which is all the universities, and I'm like, I don't want to offend anybody again, but I said, do you not use this? And what I've kind of surmised myself, they do. Okay, so all of you have seen this at some point, but it was probably your junior year in college, right? And then you went into your fall peer teaching and all that, and then you student taught, and your eyes are really wide, and you got a job, and then this is the last thing on your mind. So we just keep bringing it back because to me, it is your guidebook to help you set things up, have those conversations with administrators throughout the year to justify what you're doing. And that second, what is it, 8? That's the one we sent out last summer because, again, that summer, summer contract is what we all call it, but the year-round ag program is something that we're gonna have to keep hammering on pretty hard, okay? Not take a sidebar, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
But I am, that is what's expected, okay?
I didn't put any agenda.
And when we don't see it, we're not seeing it on the data, guys. I mean, you're a guy, you're filling out the data, so it's not like we're making it up, right? And it makes it really hard on staff then to go and ask for more funding for FP4 or for an engineering grant or any of that type of stuff when we're not seeing the result of that. And like I said, I told the story. I mean, when I interviewed, I looked at that, would have been Leon's report from 19, and it was like 80% on-site visits, 20% was out on the actual site of the SAE. And so that's a huge issue. And I know with my short time on this side that there's other challenges now that I didn't notice
you know, that I didn't have prior to 16, when I retired, within the schools and that type of deal. And of course, COVID and all that affected it drastically. So we don't even really worry about those. Our numbers were actually better than we thought they would be. But that really needs to be 50-50, right? I mean, it says right there in that standard that 50% of your time can be spent in summer visiting kids. Okay, and that's what separates us. That's why you're getting paid for 3 more months, if you will, or however many days, whatever it is, everybody's different, right? Okay, so that's a concern on us, but again, I keep harping on it. I hate to have to keep saying it all the time, but it's one of those deals, is that that's how we can go to bat, so to speak. But that's also what makes you different within your school. And I don't ever say that to another teacher as far as non-ag teacher, but I always loved it if my administrator ever said I was different. I mean, I was a little off center anyway, as most of you know, but I mean different from the standpoint of what we offer the kids, right? And why you're there and why you're doing, why you're going on trip, why you're requesting buses. I mean, this all ties into that, the whole darn thing is, okay? But that's what I guess.
It's all good, it's all good. So there are 13 standards, and again, just like things ebb and flow, this may not be a perfect time for you to start an adult program on the side. Okay, this may not be the right time for that. At the same time, maybe you need some more assistance from adults. And so if you offer a wreath building class in the month of December, you might suddenly have all kinds of adults in your world, and you can pick their brain for volunteers and all kinds of stuff. So sometimes it's right for you, sometimes it's not. But that's not something that you say, oh, I'm probably never going to do that. It is, there might be a time when this is an appropriate thing for me to do. And it may not be a year-long adult program. We're just picking that one, because that's one that a lot of times you're not as strong in. But it's not something that you have to be met in 100% in all of these areas. And so for your 2 people, the goal is for you to pick, like I said, 1 or 2 of these standards, or 2 or 3 of these standards that you feel like you're pretty strong in, and 1 or 2 where you need to improve. Fill those out completely. And then at the very end of the document here, you'll also have an introduction of your program and your strengths, and then your recommendations for improvement. And so just those you'll fill out. So like maybe up to 5 standards, and then those 2 papers. That's the expectation. So you can type them out, you can do it on Excel, and you can either take pictures of them, scan them to me. That's the expectation there. And the positive thing is to try to do this, like if you have a teaching partner, you want to do it with a teaching partner or with your advisory committee, which is what we're going to talk about next.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, also within some of that, we just didn't think it very far.
You're right.
I mean, there's examples in there.
Yes.
You know, there's templates, there's all kinds of stuff. So if you've
Yes.
never looked at it online, guys, I mean, don't,
And-
like I've told Mentor or Protégé before, I mean, don't reinvent the wheel. What she's asking you to do within that format, maybe it's a little different than what your school is wanting for. Do that the best you can, and that those templates are already in there.
Yeah, at the beginning, this is like an evidence list. So how do I know if I do or if I don't have these things? However, love the links. So this is gonna have to all be updated because it's all got PDFs that are no longer there. So that's okay. We'll get that taken care of. I needed another thing. I love you, Desi. Thank you so very much. But there is an evidence list here, and then that definition, and then the one that you have, the PDF is a dated version. I apologize for that. It has 2 links, and I pulled up the first link and looked at it and thought it looked good, but I didn't look at it as closely as I needed to. So we'll get that fixed.
So you're sending this to us in the near future, or?
That is actually already in your shared folders, like, so it's in the second part, and then you can find it online. But it's already in a folder on the site under your learning experiences.
I don't wanna jump the ship either, but piggyback off what Pam was saying about SAU visits. I'm not a big social media person, but luckily I work for someone who is at least good enough with that kind of thing. And so I know a lot of you are probably on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, but that's a great way, in my opinion, to utilize your social media. I mean, a lot of people put stuff like convention or whatever, but we try to go out and almost every single day, we try to have like a featured SAE every day in the summer to show those. And it just, you know, your superintendent, your principal, community members, that like your page, everybody sees that, it's plain as day. And I mean, it just makes it so easy. You don't have to say nothing to anybody. Everybody just is right on the phone. And so that, if you're not doing that, I think that's a really good way to utilize technology.
And I'll go one step further, and I don't mean to be negative, but I mean, I asked for calendars last May from all the teachers in Southwest District, and I got about 20 some, instead of 100 some that I should have gotten. And if you're one that I sent, I'm sorry if, I'm not singling anybody, out. I'm not gonna tell you names on ones that I have. But I mean, if I can just say, I would say, make this statement, if I was to turn that into my administrator, I would have been embarrassed. Okay, I mean, you know, when I first started, what were you taught in college? Maybe you weren't taught this. But I mean, you put the kid's name on it, right? Maybe I'm old, I don't know, maybe you're not being taught that anymore, but I mean, my school wanted to know where I was going, you know, so if I started at 8:15, which was typical when I started, because I was old school where they closed to go to the mail room every morning. And it makes those other teachers wonder what you're up to, right? Because I got asked constantly all summer long, why are you here? Because they knew I wasn't teaching summer school. Well, and some of those people have been around forever, and so I took the Rusty Thought approach, and, you know, kept it simple, because you can explain it to the same person over and over, because the English teacher would never remember that she talked to you yesterday. But go put their name, I mean, I put their names, you know what I mean? And then there are many times that I got phone calls that, hey, Billy can't do 11 o'clock, so can you go see him at 1 or whatever? And I just knew to get a hold of him, you know, even it's hardly prior to cell phones. But once we got cell phones, I could get south of Aurora there on one hill down there by Jenkins and get cell phone service, you know, and call back and find out what was going on type thing. But I mean, it's just that accountability from your position as a teacher there too. And when I turn that in, and of course, I was one that I wanted to choke them with volume of information, not useless information, but when they ask for something, I want to make sure that there's no question that I'm doing the job. You know, and I mean, I saw calendars that just had visits written across it. You know, there's no accountability whatsoever there. I mean,
Well, that's where the social media though.
yes, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
plain as day what we're doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes you may not know in
Right.
April, if you turn it in, or May, you know, even the beginning of May, but you've got to have, like, when do you start that? And it's hard your first and second year, because you don't necessarily know
Right.
all those kids that you need to make an effort for it. And I've also seen a lot of them that do either a Google Calendar or a Google Sheet that has just the date, and then they fill that in as they're going, and they always have a week ahead of time, they know where those visits are, so they've got those visits
Yeah.
semi-scheduled, or they have kids sign up, the kid has to sign up for the time slot, you know, that's on there, and they make.
Of course, I had freshmen, I mean, Grayson didn't, and we both did the same thing, but I mean, but I gave those kids a hard copy, and then there's a letter on the front of that explaining what I was doing, that way the parents, I mean, that's the old school calendar, I guess, compared to today. I mean, I don't know, I need to look at the examples that are still out there on the web on that, but I mean, I know that they've got names on them, I know those samples have names on them, I've looked at that since I
Yeah.
started. So-
Because the other part of that is the actual separation. A football coach probably goes to camp with kids. You know, a basketball coach probably goes to camp with kids. A really good FCCLA teacher is gonna travel to nationals, you know, with her students, or his students. Those things are gonna happen, but you're paid to also have that experiential learning that's taking place with your student during that time. So that is a difference of, it can't just be camp, WLC, and NVATA, and then room in your classroom, organizing those kind of things. You'll need a few of those days, but that's not the bulk of what, you know, what your time is spent on. So, yeah, so that's part of the reason why I wanted to give you that. Any other thoughts on standards specifically? Jennifer brought up one thing here, Ben asked, so in your year 2 spring experiences, it's under quality standards and information. And then on the DESE website, it's here under program management. Okay. Let me go back and pull up my share screen real quick. And so it's in the program planning handbook under chapters, but the actual tools are under this. And if you can still pull up Excel, use the second one. It's going to be a whole lot better, but I will try to get with Kathy, I guess, right? And get her an updated copy. And then I'll work on updating those links too, now that I know that's an issue. So, okay. So then Jennifer also mentioned the CCQI. And so CCQI is, well, one thing before that. So you also saw national program standards. So basically Missouri leads in everything, right? If you haven't figured that out yet in Ag Ed, there was a reason why things were in Kansas City, and the national advisor was from Missouri forever. Like, there's a lot of things we did. We're very forward thinking in this state for a lot of things. And so whenever, the national standards were done, they were based on the Blue Book, okay? A couple of years ago, when I want to say it was like 2002 or something, it was a long time ago, they froze the funding that the way Perkins money comes into the state, froze it as a part of something else with formula. Well, that caused all kinds of problems, because if you, this program may have only had one teacher at that time, now it has 3 teachers, they were still getting only paid for 1 teacher. Where another city, a lot of times it was the urban schools had 7 or 8 career tech teachers, and then they had dwindled down to 1 or 2, but they were still getting paid for 7. So it was a big issue, okay? But it was an issue that occurred, and to fix it, they had to come up with some new standard. And so Leon was very, instrumental, initiated the conversations to come up with this CCQI, which this is basically our program standards, but it's made vanilla enough that any CTE program can operate under it. Okay, so this is something that you fill out every other year. So this is an off year for it. So next year, we will definitely take time at this meeting and most likely at the fall seminar to talk about it again, just to make sure. But my understanding from joint staff was that no one is filling this out this year. And so basically what it is you go through similar things. It talks about your program planning, and then it talks about your CTSO, the different things that you do. You fill it out together if you're more than one teacher, and you go through those things, and then you give it to someone in your main office who enters it into core data, unless they give you a password to go do it, which is not a big deal. It's just clicking dots, but they may or may not do that, but depends on the school. So
Yeah,
you did
he
it.
called me because they assigned him a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would try to stick with
It
it.
would have been, once she had to give me access to.
Is it in the tiered monitor system where?
Yes,
Yes.
you had to get web access, but then once I got in there, it was a 10-minute deal.
But there was a lot of teachers struggling because nobody would tell them who was the person responsible.
Right,
Who
right.
does core data, because there's
Yeah.
only one person per school allowed into that system.
And
We can't get in there, all we can do is view.
Yeah.
Kinda like
And it
we
just
do
depends,
with
because like at
Right.
Eldon, the federal programs person's in there, the career center director's
Yeah.
in there, you know, I mean, just.
But they were all getting the answers that they didn't know
Exactly.
who, so
Who was
they
supposed to
signed
do it.
him up.
Yeah, it's good then.
His first year teacher.
I'm pretty sure your name was the only name in the hat at your school, right?
No,
Was
they
that-
were we were sending them emails saying it's gotta be done, because if it was not completed last year, you're ineligible for FE4 for 2 years.
For 2 years, yeah. So you want to make sure you get it completed, but it's just a sidebar for this year because it's not a ton of information. Some people last year filled that out instead of doing the program standards. I really do want you to go ahead and look at our standards because they are just a little bit more specific to the things that you're doing and talking about, okay? So then the last thing in this section that we need to think about is advisory. Okay, that's where those are. So the top one is going to give you all the information. So it's like the narrative of what the indicators are for this. And then the second piece is the evaluation tool. You print off the evaluation tool, you fill it out, and then you give it into your office. Okay, that's the way that works. But again, you don't have to do that this year. So advisory committees. So how many people would say they have a functional advisory committee currently? Got some hands? Good. Some people were like in process. Some people were like totally disbanded, right? Different things. Why do we use advisory committees? Let's get a couple answers. Britt, you had your hand up, and why do you guys have an advisory committee?
Community involvement, stakeholder engagement.
Okay,
whatever you wanna call
yeah, you get people involved with your program that give a care about it, right? And they are allowed to come in and give you some feedback, and you ever get any good ideas from that? Maybe?
I mean, it's just normal.
Okay,
We have a breakfast every year, all of our vocational departments, we do a breakfast, we'll all meet like with the culinary department and have a breakfast, and there's, the kids will prepare, and then we all break out and have our advisory council meetings. We're most of the program run down, and everybody's like, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
And that's, how you doing, Kenny, that's it.
okay. Is it always supposed to be a pep rally for you?
What's
Is that always the purpose for, it's like your pep rally?
I don't know, it's just something we do.
Yeah.
We usually try to include a board member,
Mhm.
just, we try to share the board members out. And, retired act teacher.
Yeah. Different people there. Yeah. and sometimes it's hard to get actual feedback from them, right? They do want to just be like, you guys are doing phenomenal, or like, that is great. But it's also kind of good to get some different improvement areas. So I just have a couple things that we talked about here. Why would we have advisory committees? First of all, by law, all CTE programs are required to do this. So if you have some wackadoo administrator who is like, oh no, we're not having any people in, we're not going to talk about that, we're not asking their input, that has happened before. It is actually state statute that you have advisory program for any CTE committee, but there's other better reasons than that. It does provide that community input, right? Sometimes there's community members that are like, hey, I don't think your kids know. I one time had a guy come in that he works in carpentry. He's like, would you just teach a kid how to read a dang tape measure without it to happen to be an easy read? He's like, I would love to hire a kid who could measure to, more than the inch or even quarter inch. And I was just like, I never teach that, right? I've never taught that in my entire life. Like, yes, they should know how to use a ruler by the end of second grade, but they don't. And when he's laying floor, he doesn't have time to make sure and check every single time. If they're going to work for him, they have to know how to do that basic skill, right? And so he definitely called me out on that, but I was like, yes, I'll try to take care of that, Donnie. Thank you so much for being here. But it is one of those things that I did ask the question. So it was like, I made for sure that they knew. And I think at one point in time, I even invited him up to see if their measuring abilities were up to snuff. So, and then they can be great advocates for your program, right? If there are people that are there, they're going to be the people that can go out and share that message. And again, it sounds different coming from someone from the community instead of it just coming, from you. And so that is something that can be really positive. And then again, this is not an external evaluation of you as a teacher. This is not just a pep rally for you. This is also not a witch trial, right? It's not either one of those things. It's really looking at the program and seeing the things that are there. A lot of times it is positive to, include food. It's also really positive to make sure to tell them like, what's the expectation of it? And so having an agenda, making sure that they're like helping you decide something is kind of valuable because then it helps them, like there's a reason for them to be there. They want to provide some input. And then the other thing is just letting you know, like, what is the commitment? We're going to have 1 meeting a year, 2 meetings a year. Those meetings are going to last this, 1 hour. They're, that kind of thing. And then it's an every other year. It's every, you rotate off after 3 years or whatever it is. Like spelling that all out can usually get more people there. How many people are a good number to be on advisory committee? How many people should you ask? What do you think? There's not a magical number. I mean, it's one of those things that they're starting to, you guys think I'm not going to have pumpkin pie at the next one. Y'all are falling asleep now. It is one of those that it's a lot of times they may say like 9 to 13. I mean, sometimes they're huge. A lot of times if you have, like you invite 10, you'll be lucky if you get 5, right? And so sometimes it's not bad to have, additional people there. At our little small school, we had myself and Fax. And so we would have a joint meeting. She would usually cook some meal and we would tour our facilities. We talk about our facilities. And a lot of the time, the people that she asked had some really great ideas for me. She always had somebody from Extension. She had a Tennessee person from Home Ec, from Fax that was actually like, they had some other resources that I could apply for that I didn't even know about, or some Extension resources that were usually really positive. So don't be afraid to engage those adults. Sometimes it's uncomfortable to begin with, but it was usually something that after we did it, it was like, oh, why did this get so, so built up in my mind? But especially if you have something that's coming up that you're going to need some support on, at Eldon, like that's the way the advisory committees help them to, pass board issues or bond issues. Like there was a lot in the ag community that didn't see it. Their first building was built by people who just got together and they said, we've got to have a bigger shop. And so that's who built their first shop. And then when they needed that bond issue, like they really had to talk to lots of people. I heard up here somebody say, so is this your alumni? It's different. So an alumni and a booster club and advisory committee, those are different groups. They have different purposes. But there could be some people from your alumni that may be on your advisory committee. There are times when people might have a breakfast where they might have an alumni meeting and they just go through, here's our highlights of our year, and here's this, and can you guys all sign this because this is our advisory meeting. It should be a give and take. Like, yes, you're probably going to share your classes and your sizes and things that are going on, but you should provide some opportunity for feedback for it to really be valuable.
And I'll throw another thing, because I know both of us talked about new buildings and that type of deal. I don't even feel like that's what it's for. I mean, it can be as simple as, hey, I need some equipment for FP4 next year. And maybe they don't have as much funding as what you're gonna need for the advisory committee so that they kind of understand once you get them involved and ingrained in the program. You know what I mean? And that helps. The other thing I was gonna throw out is in the initial part possibly, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. These VA forms that you love so much, you know, you're supposed to send to the state, that gives you a summary right there, your interest summary. You know, your kid, the one you did in VA two, that gives you that summary that you can give to your advisory committee right off the bat. On this is what we have right now. It could help drive your curriculum, was what I was sharing with these guys, as far as those surveys. And then when you get into the SAE stuff and some of those other VAs, I mean, it's just good information to explain that program to your advisory committee, even though you picked some of those people, they're still not, it's not your mom and dad's FFA anymore, and again, you know, it changes over time.
But some of those things, the best things, like I said, I had a guy that built fence, and then after he came in and saw the shop and stuff, he's like, hey, I'm gonna come through just to give all your rollers a go over. I don't know, this guy from, if you're using the same guy in for gas, he's not really very good. Has he done that for you? I'm like, no. I said, I think they're all functioning well. But then he just did that, like, that was his deal, and he came in and helped do that every year before we started. And from that point forward, he just checked everything, you know, and it's just those kind of informal things that I would never have said, like, hey, can you come check out these welders? Because I didn't really think about it. It wasn't a major learning problem or anything, but it's just things that you might get that can be helpful. Some chaperones came from those conversations about just things that we sometimes need. And you were talking about, Abby was talking about, you know, going to Lockwood and getting those things. After, when Dad was on an advisory committee, he's the guy that brought in all kinds of stuff, elk intestines and a aborted calf and all kinds of random that he's like, hey, if you'll use this in your animal science class, like, yes, anytime you bring it in, we'll use it. So those are located in chapter 2 of the program planning handbook. And that facilitator guide has an example of a letter. You'll probably need to revamp it. You'll probably make it an email. But it's one of those things that there's an example of a letter. There's an example of like a constitution, if your school wants you to do it like super formal, which talks about like how people rotate off and all that jazz. And then there's also sample agendas. So there's lots of different things in there. But you can also ask your mentors. If your mentor doesn't have one, ask Jim. We can get you some samples of some things that people talk about. But like he said, going over those VA forms are really easy. But really, it doesn't have to be a ton of extra work. It can just be a short, here's what it is. Do you guys have input? I'd like to show you some things in the building to kind of see some of those things. Scott Stone did bring up last night, you do want to tell your advisory committee, like, this is just input. Like, we gather all these things together. I always make sure to tell them, like, we're very supportive here. So I'm not trying to say I'm not, because he said there was one time he just mentioned something and one of those people like went to the superintendent the next morning and it sounded like Scott was out, you know, drumming up the tent, like undercutting the superintendent over something that they'd already had a conversation about, but just saying like, these are needs. And so you do have to just sometimes make sure, you know, that's there. I also said I had a principal that got super defensive, like anytime they said anything, he felt the need to defend whatever that was that might be slightly negative. And so after 2 years of that, I was just like, I scheduled it for an away basketball game night because I knew he'd be gone as a supervisor and just had to say like, I know you won't be able to be here because you're probably going to that basketball game, but I hear him all the time. I really wanted to hear from those community members. And so I'm not saying don't have an administrator there, don't for sure have an administrator there. Make sure your administrator knows it's happening. That's the big thing. And invite them if they would like to come. But just sometimes it's great for them to hear that. Sometimes they can't take any criticism whatsoever. So, okay. Any other thoughts or practices on advisory committees? Moss, did you have anything you were going to say earlier or not?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, our advisory board has been probably one of the best cheerleader for our program in recent times. In fact, like 24 hours ago, I was sitting with my director, we were having a conversation, and she just made the comment to me in this conversation. She said, you know, like 5 weeks ago, you know, we had this big meeting and talked about junior high ag program. What do you think about that? Well, I pulled up my laptop, I sent an email out, so we've got 20 people on our advisory board meeting, you know, we do have 10 or so show up. Sent an email out saying, hey, just reply back yes or no. Do you think we should have a junior high ag program? All 20 of them within 10 minutes responded yes. And so now that potentially is in the works too. So just within, you know, 10 minutes, the advisory board, I pulled up, showed my administrator, said, hey, these people in the community, these are our stakeholders. They think that this is something that our school district.
Yeah. Yeah, and they probably wouldn't even know who to ask all the time, you know, some of those kind of things. So it could be a resource. Well, thanks for that. Okay, moving on to the next part. And I said I had forgotten to send you guys, and we probably wouldn't have a whole lot of time for this anyway, but I do want to kind of share out, and I want to hear some things from mentors, especially on program of activities. So we've had a couple of different things that either these coming to me from first and second year teachers, or when they go to the State Department as a part of, like, if you're going to be eligible for STAR chapter awards, you have to turn in your program of activities. So when we think about the program of activities, what kind of things do you include in that document? What would you say?
Oh, we include some things that it's like, we don't want to forget next year, like, how we select our barn warming king and queen, which I know is really stupid. But are we gonna vote? Are they gonna do a penny collection? It's like, well, we're gonna put it in POA, and then next year, whenever the kids start talking about it, Jay and I are like, nope, it's in the POA, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
So we kind of use it as our fallback of, no, we don't
Yeah.
do it that way. And, or if they come up with some ridiculous activity, we say, oh, well, it's not in there, so we're not doing it.
Yeah. And it can save you on that, right? And,
That's
yeah.
not ridiculous at all. I'm here to tell you, I've seen some dumbest things about barn warming.
Yes, yes, so.
Well, I think with the POA, when you hand those things, like this summer we went through our POA, our officer retreat, you hand them something that's a 15 or 12, 20, I don't know how many pages it is, a lot of pages. And they're like, we should do this. I'm like, okay, well, what are you taking out? Because here's everything we do, and here's where it falls in, and here's why we do it. So what are you getting rid of versus, because when you look at that on a one piece of paper, and there's 30 or 40 activities on there, it's probably more than that, but it doesn't make as big of an impact, I guess. But when they're sitting there going through the POA, and they're like, oh, we should do this, and we should do that, and it's coming up with all these off the wall activities that, quite frankly, we don't want to do. I mean, let's just say the obvious. Like, there's good things that you do, and then they can just have to be, especially last year, we couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
You know, so I think like this summer, they were like, let's do it all, you know, like pump the brakes.
Yeah, you do have to, right? And so this is located in that program planning handbook too, in chapter 9. What else do you guys include in your POA? I'm gonna pull up one from a couple years ago from a young teacher, and I'll show that to you, and then we'll go from there. So what else do you include in there?
We also include some descriptions for awards that we give at banquet, like, how many we're gonna give, like, we're gonna give this many scholarship awards. So whenever the principal's like, you only have 4 kids get A's, it's like, no, everybody gets an A in that class, but this is our parameter of who gets the award.
Yeah. And so this is one that was from Cheyenne Martin, and when I first asked her a year or so ago if I could use it, she was like, well, this is not original. And she's like, I mean, everything on there is what we do, but I took the template from somebody else and changed my things. And I'm like, which is what a good ag teacher would do, right? And so those are things that are there. So they do include like who's in charge of those different things. And so whether or not you start with like 15 committees, or you have the 3 big overarching thing and you put different pieces in there, this is another way for your students, like they may want to do 1,000 things in that healthy lifestyles or whichever one is super fun, all that stuff. And you can be like, sorry, that committee has too many activities already in it, right? You have to balance out these committees. And so there's ways that you can kind of, that's one thing that you can put in there to help you realize, this is not Mrs. Abbott's POA, right? This is this whole group of students. This is also a way to help try to build that student ownership of things. So there should be some component of goal setting. You may not like it like this, it's just like the list of goals on there and then the list of activities. A lot of people like to do it like columned out, almost like an Excel file where here's the goal, here's how we're gonna do it and where we're at. Something I would like to see on this one in the future as you move through is what did you actually do on those goals? So you can show students, this is what we did last year. So it's more of a working document. I also started putting at the end of our POA things similar to what Jill was talking about, like at tractor pull, there's 18,000 things that have to happen. And I need at least 6 competent adults and a few good kids to make sure certain things happen. And so there were specific instructions for the concession stand. Instead of having these documents all over the place, I just started adding a tab to the bottom of my POA so that all of the tractor pull instructions for concession stand, for gate, for whatever else, They were all right there to tell them exactly what they were supposed to do at the end of the night. What are you supposed to do with the money? What are you supposed to count? And even the inventory sheet was all right there, not attached to my POA, not a part of my POA, but on the same document, so that it was all nice and neat. They also have a budgeting function. So you do have a date, but you also may have a budgeting function, and what is the purpose of it? And so it's not only, a POA is not only a list of activities and dates that are there. So you need to make sure that it has a little bit more meat than that. The other thing that some of them were talking about last night is that, for example, if they have, let's say that they put on a contest at their school, okay? In order for that to happen, there are lots of phone calls that have to be made. And so they would actually split that up between their committees and teach kids how to make those phone calls. And so they didn't have to do all of those things as the adult. They taught how to make the phone calls, and then they split the kids up with older upperclassmen and some of their officers. But it was one of those things that they taught those specific skills as they went through the time. Okay, so where are you guys, what would you say, Protegés, where are you at on POAs? How many of you guys say like fully developed, it's a 5, 3, we might have one, or 1, I finally know what POA stands for tonight. 5, 3, or 1, where would you say you are? Ready? 1, 2, 3. 5, 3, or 1. Okay, that's okay. All right. So I consider these to be working documents. And again, this doesn't mean you have to have 65 things on there, but you probably should have 5 or so things. If you're going to break it up into just 3 categories, you should probably have about 5 things on there, depending on how active your things, you know, what's going on with stuff. And so, Caitlin, you're going to have mum sales, and mum sales may fall into more than one spot if you had more than one committee working on that, right? There's different things, different ways you can do that. How do you guys do committees? Let's have a real quick conversation about that. How do you guys do committees?
Our officers are committee chairmen for the most part, and we put on their seniors that need will probably get their state degree. We ask them to be committee chairman. And then this year we just assign kids to it. That's kind of helped.
Yeah.
So
When do they meet?
whenever the committee chairman works that out.
Okay.
So we don't have a specific time. But one thing I was gonna say earlier that we did a couple of years ago is if we put something else on the calendar, we took something else off. And you can't do it all. One of the greatest decisions of my teaching career is we didn't have barn warming for the last couple of years. It's great.
That was one of the things I said whenever we started our program at Tuscumbia. The kids are like, I said, well, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, doesn't Eldon have a calendar? I'm like, yes, but you make your own calendar. Like, and they're like, well, you know, I said, so they're like, well, when are we having barn warming? I don't know. Do you want to have barn warming? And they're like, well, when is Eldon having their barn warming? And I'm like, stop saying that. Like, you decide the new activities of the group. And sometimes we almost have to do that because I finally said in, I think year 3, if the DJ and I are the only 2 there at 9 o'clock, we're never doing this activity again. We're not wasting the money on it. Like, you guys do not want to come to a dance. And in the end, they didn't want to come to a dance. They still wanted to have a crowning of somebody, and they wanted music playing, but it was so much better when we did a hayride instead. So we met at a group, and there was a set of parents that I think still to this day provide the FFA hayride, and they had a big bonfire, and that's really what they wanted to do. And they crowned a king and queen, and that was so much better. And they stayed till 10 o'clock or until we tell them you have to go home. Instead of it being this awkward, everybody sits and looks at each other till they crown a king and that's it. So a king and queen. So you do have to challenge them sometimes if they're not attending those things anymore. That event may have, you know, made its way and be done. So that you just have to kind of have them challenge them to say, is this really something we still want to do? The other point of caution is sometimes like you really want to try hard. I know there were some teachers who were talking at fall seminar about their officers, kind of like you were saying, Jennifer, came up with this great idea that they just to really impact getting a bunch of people recruited to be in FFA. They were gonna have an event every night of the first week of school. And the teachers were kind of like, I don't know if that's a good idea, but they weren't strong enough to say, no, let's not do this. And so they're like, instead of having like one really great recruiting, we had like 5 nights of really mediocre, not so great things. And then some kids were like, I'm not gonna be in FFA. They have an event every night of the week, you know, and it's just like, not really. So they were all like, yeah, lesson learned.
I don't know,
I
I'm gonna try that next year.
Good for you.
And they're like, yeah, the first week of school is really hard to do stuff. Like, yes, it is. So anything else about POA?
Probably, I mean, not to slam or Jesse, I mean, that standard was probably another reference would be to go to national FFA back
Yes.
underneath that program of activities, so you can kind of see different samples of those committees.
I did have some people say they did not like that last night, but it was mixed reviews. So I don't know if any of you guys have used the program planning handbook or not, or the program plan hand. If you've used the FFA version of the tool for POAs or not, but there's also AET also offers a chapter planning tool that some people like it a lot better. So there are lots of different things. There's no, I could care less what your format is. It just should have some goals, should have some budgeting, should have what kids are going to be responsible for it and when is it planned and organized. And then if you have some results, that's also real positive, just so you kind of keep track from your year. What did we make on the hog roast last year? What did we make on the mum tail last year? You know, putting some of those things in to kind of help you out. Okay. Anything else on that? Okay, we're gonna take just like a 5-10 minute stretch break. So use the restroom, get a drink if we need to, and then we'll just get right back at it here in like five minutes or so. Okay.
What are you gonna do today?
Yeah, I bought a big planner like that. I don't even use it. It's gotta be on. Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I can. Covered timeline, news right there on their wall. I had. Yes.
I can't get this to come up.
Well, we can't, we have.
I tried to get on there.
Well, the PDF was made like this amount, so I gotta use some. Yes, and I have to watch when I do one like that.
Again, no offense to that example, but it's not still about the chapter. Eventually, when I retire, it's start
I usually be.
It's
gotta be that.
I started putting. I mean, that explanation. No, I'm just saying, I don't want to be dominant. But it's there.
I forget what it's We make a note of that.
I'm pretty sure. That's. Yeah. That's probably.
Program activities is.
Yeah, they do read through all that.
No, you could have as little as 3. You could do one of those headings, you know, 3 categories. And that's the thing, when they change the application, so years back. And again, I'm not promoting, just a lot of the application. But you can have 3 committees, you can have 9 committees. You don't even have to have the 15 anymore, like you used to have, or 18. You know, the only reason we ever did was the number of kids, so we only had 10 or 11 kids, or 15 kids at the most on the committee instead of 35 or 40, you know, if you got 170 or 80 kids, yeah, because otherwise somebody's hiding, right?
Right, exactly.
One of kids, but I don't think they're sure. We got.
Next Thursday is my senior So I gave her 0 on my school days. I had my activity skills was like first night here. And I had to give her a one, but I yeah. Sometimes. So I was like, let's go. That's the thing. Well, she goes, I did something. There's 3 or 4 meetings. I don't think, and I look at the guy, I go, for some reason, did not say I said that. Microsoft Word, from that, it still saves it.
The reason I like it.
So we have speeches, about these, and I have to get some. Hey guys, the next thing we're gonna do is actually. We're gonna kind of discuss tonight, and then we'll head on out of here, okay? So this part is really just to kind of talk about some things that are going on, have some group problem solving. I'm actually gonna stop. We're not gonna record this part.